Okay, after our summer recess, we're going to pick back up on Hebraisms. So the first one I want to start with is the concept of profaning the name of God. And it's likened and very, very much connected to taking the Lord's name in vain. And it's not, so much of a verbal issue. It's more of a lifestyle issue. Leviticus 18:21, and you shall not let any of your descendants pass through the fire to Moloch, nor shall you profane the name of your God. I am the Lord. And so the idea is to treat God's name with contempt, and his character and reputation is all bound up in his name. So when it's not so much verbal. Even though the Jewish people practice the idea of not taking actually the personal name of God and saying it outward, they said it one time a year. I think on Yom Kippur, I'm not sure. I think it was on that day, but I know they could only say it one time a year, and it was the high priest. And so they guarded ever saying that. So a lot of times they'll say Hashem or Adonai in place of the Tetragrammaton. But that's like kind of one aspect of it. That's not really what the intent is. The intent is how you carry the name with you as a believer. So as you can see in Leviticus 18, they were carrying themselves in such a way as they would give their babies to Moloch and sacrifice their babies to this demon god. And that was, in effect, doing that was profaning the name of God because they claimed to be the Israelites, they claimed to be the followers of Yahweh, and they were doing such horrible and malicious acts to their own children. And so, obviously, that's the concept of profaning the name. It's to act in a way that's irreverent, act in a way that's contemptuous through sinful behavior or idolatry. And so, it's the concept of just bearing the name. It's just like you call yourself a Christian, you bear that name. Now, we all know that a lot of people bear that name and they call themselves Christians. But it's really a minority of people that actually bear the name properly and are what we call a good witness. This is the opposite of what the Lord said in the Lord's Prayer, hallowed be thy name. So in our prayer, we're hallowing God's name, but in our prayer, we're supposed to live that out. Hallowed be his name. We're not just saying that. We're hallowing his name by our behavior and how we act. And so when people see that behavior, it hallows his name. Or you can profane his name by your behavior. And again, the name for Israel obviously represented this covenantal nature that Yahweh had with Israel. But we are also in covenant as well with the Messiah, through Messiah to God, through the new covenant. So it's still covenantal language. It has covenantal aspects to it. And we talk about covenants. It's kind of like what you would think about in a marriage. You're married to God. You're married to the Messiah. It's that kind of idea. So like if in your relationships with your own spouse, if you did something out of whack, you would embarrass your spouse. You would, you would bring shame upon your spouse. You would bring shame upon your family. It's a kind of a shame culture idea that because you're in this relationship, you just don't get to act any way you want to act. You don't act independently of that covenant relationship, just like you wouldn't act independently of your marriage. That would bring shame. So you have to keep in mind it's a Near Eastern, Middle Eastern concept of shame culture, which today a lot of people are divorced from this concept of a shame culture or shame relationship. People just act how they want to act, and they don't think how it affects other people, how it brings shame on their family, how it brings shame on the church, how it brings shame on their community, or whatever. They just do what they want to do, and they act radically independent of everyone else. And so this idea of profaning or hallowing God's name has to do with that relationship that we don't want to embarrass him, in essence, like we wouldn't want to embarrass our spouse. And so that's the essence of that. And so that's pretty easy to understand. And so I want to move on to a little bit more complicated one that might take a little bit more time. The idea of uncovering the head or let the hair hang loose is is something that I have to unpack, and it's going to take a while. The literal meaning is to let loose the head or to uncover the head. Particularly, a lot of times this has to refer to women's hair in the ancient world. Para, obviously, in the Hebrew is to loosen or let go, let hang unrestrained, wild, disordered, disgrace. And obviously, Rosh in Hebrew is the head. So it's to let the hair go disorderly, in chaos. And it doesn't necessarily mean not combing your hair. It just means that it's uncovered and there should be a covering to it. Numbers 5:18 says, in the ritual of suspected adulteress, then the priest shall stand the woman before the Lord, uncover the woman's head, and put the offering for remembering in her hands. And so there was a whole ritual associated to uncovering the woman's head if she was suspected to be an adulteress. And then they also made her drink something to prove her innocence. Anyway, moving on, Leviticus 10:6 says, do not uncover your heads nor tear your clothes lest you die. So this is the idea of the priests in mourning, not to dishonor God's holiness by even the priests' women uncovering their hair. Leviticus 13:45, now the leper on whom the sore is, the head shall be uncovered. So they were to uncover their head when there was ceremonial uncleanness for the woman. And then, referring to the hair, now in the number 6:5, talking about the Nazirite vow that men would have, no razor shall come on his head, he shall let the locks of his hair, of his head grow. So this is the reversal. So when the man took a Nazirite vow, he left his hair uncut, which was a symbol of consecration to God, which was like Samson. Samson was a permanent Nazirite vow. Paul had taken a Nazirite vow, but when you took it, you let your hair be unkept. You didn't trim it. You didn't do anything with it. Okay, so the idea of allowing someone to see your hair has to do with the hair, especially women, represented the outward or the inner workings of her. So her outward appearance with the hair reflected what was going on morally or spiritually internally, and that reality. So like in the case of the adulterous woman, Numbers 5, uncovering her head was a symbolic exposure of her possible guilt. That was the symbolism of that, right? But in other contexts, the uncut or disordered hair was a visual marker of mourning, disgrace, or uncleanness, okay? So that's the background on this. And again, we're far removed from that culture, but it is picked up in the church. And the concept is talked about in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, where a woman's head and her coverings are discussed in regards to her spiritual authority, of that being the man, and submission and worship in the context of a church. So the Jewish background carries over into the New Testament covenant and the church. So in 1 Corinthians 11, 7 through 10, it says, for a man indeed ought not to cover his head, since he is the image and glory of God, but a woman is the glory of man. For a man is not from woman, but the woman from man. So what is Paul doing? He's establishing hierarchy, spiritual hierarchy, right? Nor was man created for the woman, but the woman for the man. For this reason, the woman ought to have a symbol of authority on her head because of the angels. So again, even in Greco-Roman society, obviously this is Corinth, but the same applies. They had the same traditions in there. And the fact that as a woman, you didn't walk into a public assembly or anywhere publicly without your head covered. This was true in Jewish life. This was true in most Greco-Roman life. And so even in Corinth society, uncovered hair could signify sexual availability, immodesty, or spiritual rebellion. And this was true, obviously, with Jewish concepts as well. So it's kind of an ancient practice, especially in the ancient world. It was a big deal. But Paul notes at the end of it, because of the angels. And that's the key phrase that throws a lot of people off. I've looked at, I know it's got to be, 25 different commentaries, and none of them get it right. And none of them get it right, not because they're not smart. It's because they don't know the Hebrew background. And if people will just take the time to understand the Jewish background, that's the reason why we're studying Jewish idioms, these passages would not be mysterious. So like in all the commentaries that are written by Gentiles that don't know Hebrew background, they have no idea what that means. They take guesses, they have no clue, and you know, to some of the absurdity is that, you know, not to offend good angels while angels are watching the worship. And it's like, that doesn't even make sense. Why would a woman's hair be offensive to a fallen angel? I'm not a fallen angel, but a good angel. That doesn't even make sense. So none of it makes sense unless you know the background and you know the Hebrew background. And because of the angels is a direct connection to Genesis 6. And because many of your commentaries are written by Gentiles, and many of them interpret Genesis 6 from a Sethite view and not necessarily a Nephilim giant view, they're anti-supernatural of what happened in Genesis 6, they misinterpret Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, and they miss what Paul is trying to say. The angels are in Genesis 6 are not referencing to good angels, they're a reference to fallen angels. And so context controls how the angels are understood. These are fallen ones. Genesis 6 is dealing with fallen ones. And therefore, since I'm dealing with Genesis 6 and Paul's dealing with Genesis 6, he is not talking about good angels. Since he's referencing Genesis 6, he is talking about fallen angels in reference to that. So initially, before we go any further, Paul is saying a woman needs to have her head covered or submit to that authority who is her husband because of fallen angels. So that's the outset of the interpretation. It's not referencing good angels because of that Genesis 6. So what is happening? Well, if a woman were to take off her head covering in a church service or in a synagogue, or in Greco-Roman life, it would be a sign of immodesty. It would be a sign of insubordination. And prostitutes dressed that way. They uncovered their hair to symbolize that they were available. Even to this day, if you go to Israel, a lot of the Orthodox Hasidics, the women, until they're ready to marry, they will let their hair show. And then once they're married, they shave their hair, and then they start wearing wigs. And they cover their hair for the rest of their life with wigs, very expensive wigs. So they don't necessarily use even head coverings anymore, they use wigs. And so when you're walking through Old City and you're by the wall, you'll see a lot of Jewish women with wigs on. And typically their head's shaved. Not all, but most of them, their heads are shaved. But it's in concert with this that up until the age of marriage, they let their hair show to show that they are available to marry. And then the Orthodox, once they're married, will cover that with a wig. So today, the tradition is still there today in the Hasidics and Orthodox. So anyway, they are to do this, to cover their heads as a sign of authority to their spouse and to the church authority that they're in, so that they don't open themselves up to Genesis 6 and the boundary crossing aspect that happened there and the spiritual rebellion that happened there. So again, this is Second Temple ideas. And in Second Temple literature, which is the framework in which the New Testament is written, this is on every Jewish person's mind. Every Jewish person understood Genesis 6. The early church understood Genesis 6. Up until Augustine started monkeying around and changing the interpretation of it because he was embarrassed by it as he contended with pagans. And so this is not out of the norm. This is where Paul is working out of. So he's working out of that context. Okay. Mishnah Ketubot 7:6. A wife who goes out without uncovered hair is violating Dat Yehudit, which is the law of Jewish women, grounds for divorce without receiving her ketubah settlement. So it's signaled to the Jewish people that you go out without head covering, your husband can divorce you. That's how serious it was to not have your head covered as a woman. But again, it symbolized I'm under authority. I'm under my husband's protection. I'm under spiritual protection of the synagogue, spiritual protection of the church, or whatever you're referring to. But again, it's about order in worship. That's the overall context, is order in worship. And just like you see today, there's churches that have no order in their worship because they'll let female pastors preach. They'll let people run up and down the aisles. They'll act like crazy people. They'll practice unbiblical tongues, not biblical tongues. They'll have people prophesying at the wrong times, out of order, more than 3. And so it's chaos, and it's out of order. And when you have this, especially women not submitting to authority in a church, it makes the whole church vulnerable to Genesis chapter 6. So what do you mean, the Genesis chapter 6 thing? Well, let's just read that real quick so we know the context of what Paul is referring to. Now, it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, daughters were born to them. And that the sons of God, and that's a technical term, that is not, a human line. The sons of God are Benecha Elohims, and they're a reference to angels. In this context, it's fallen angels. And they saw the daughters of men. So notice it's a one-way street. And why is that? Because all angels are male. There's no female angels. Saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful. And they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever. It's the idea that he's not going to restrain what's happening here forever. For he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. So because of what happens here in verse 2, God is going to restrain this for the next 120 years, and then he will lift off his restraint, and the lifting off the restraint is the Noah's flood. And then what was produced from this is there were giants on the earth, or the Hebrew is Nephilim. Fallen ones. The Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, translated it giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, they bore children to them, and these were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. So these became the famous demigods, if you want to call them, the hybrids of that day. So you have a hybrid situation happening in Genesis 6, and everybody understood this. Everybody in the Second Temple era understood this, that these were giants. Goliath is a giant. Goliath has 4 brothers. They're Nephilim. There's Anakims, Rephaim. They are all giant clans. When Joshua gets into the land and they have to fight them, the king of Og is a giant. He's a Nephilim or Rephaim, Anakim. Those are giant clans. And so it happened afterwards, and where we find that afterwards is in they said, daughters, sons of men, all of whom then Lord. Oh, it's on that passage. Anyway, it talks about it, and it happened afterwards. So this is what happened, what triggered Noah's flood. Now, some of the background on this in Second Temple literature is like First Enoch. First Enoch is Second Temple literature, Jewish tradition, but again, this is all what orally they knew and was codified in First Enoch. So basically out of what their background was, that a group of 200 angels called watcher angels. Watcher angels are referenced in Daniel chapter 4, and they saw the beauty of women and made a pact to take them as wives. The leader was Simjaza, which is probably another name for Satan, or one of the higher ranked angels. And basically, they bound themselves by an oath to carry out their plan together, so none would back out. So they made a covenant. They actually made the covenant according to First Enoch on Mount Hermon, which is a very demonic place, still to this day. And this is where Peter made the great revelation that Jesus was the Messiah, the Son of God. And he did it on Mount Hermon to kind of spike the football in the enemy's end zone type of thing. He said it right there. Who do men say that I am? And he said it right on the footsteps of Mount Hermon. This act, then, what it was created to do is to create a hybrid situation so that Messiah couldn't come, because according to Genesis 3, he has to be the seed of a woman, which means he's 100% human. And so in order to stop that, Satan decided to do a hybrid situation and corrupt all humanity and even the animals so that Messiah couldn't come through this. Anyway, it says in 1 Enoch 7:1, and they took unto themselves wives, and each chose for himself one, and they began to go into them and defile themselves with them, and they taught them charms and enchantments. And one of the things we find out from 1 Enoch is the deal that was cut between the dads of these daughters and these fallen angels is that the fallen angels would trade information, knowledge that humans could not possibly know. But every bit of the knowledge that they shared with humans was disastrous. It was meant to help them and make them more powerful, but everything they gave them was disastrous. So that makes sense because if you're a fallen angel and you're a demon, you can't do any good. So all the information you give out is always going to be an end road to disaster, which is exactly what's happening today. Where people are tapped into the occult and they're tapped into getting into spiritism, and they go to it through psychedelics or drugs or whatever, and occultism. And lo and behold, they encounter beings, and these beings then download information that they would never have before. And most of this information that they're downloading is a lot of technological information that's actually going to cause the beast system to be developed and bring our own demise. So the same thing that's happening back then is still happening right now with fallen angels and demons. Well, this union produced a hybrid called a Nephilim. Or in some cases it produced giants. In some cases it produced half human, half some, whatever. Sometimes they were mixed with animal DNA. It just went bonkers. It went crazy. Because they're angelic, they had power that was way beyond normal. And so it exacerbated the sin. It caused a lot of problems. The forbidden knowledge that was given out during that period of time was metalworking and weapon making, which caused the art of war to develop. And so before then, mankind did not have that kind of technology. And this is what we see in the historical records, that there's all of a sudden an explosion of technology all of a sudden. It's not gradual, it's all of a sudden. And we see civilization appear all of a sudden. And not this gradual, evolutionary paradigm. It's not like that. It's just an explosion of people groups and an explosion of technology that starts developing. And this is what has given rise to ancient aliens and the cult following that you see on TV, that, it was aliens that gave humans these wonderful pieces of technology to build these wonderful things like the pyramid or whatever they were, Stonehenge, or all these other ancient things that we have no ability to explain how they did it technologically. Well, if you go back to First Enoch, and everybody knew in the Second Temple era, that's where that information came from. Sorcery, enchantments, astrology, occultic secrets. So what they gave during that period of time was how to tap into the spirit world. And this is what spurned the idea that caused Babylon, the Babylonian mystery cult. So fallen angels were teaching how to get in contact with them and basically create portals from this life to the next. The other interesting thing is that they taught the women cosmetics and beauty, how to beautify themselves, particularly their eyes. It's not to say that wearing makeup is wrong. It's not, but what the angels were doing, the fallen angels were teaching women the art of seduction. And the art of seduction, from an angelic standpoint, has worked time immemorial. If you look at major marketing, once we have grown out of the woke culture now, we're trying to get out of that, marketers are now returning back to really what sells. And what sells? Sex, okay? They realize the woke culture, if you do not put a good-looking man or a good-looking woman to sell your product, people really don't want to buy your product. And they tried that during the woke culture, and that's where you had the whole body shaming idea and all that stupid. And what happens is it doesn't sell because no one's attracted to that. So the idea of seduction, the idea of marketing, the idea of all of that has to do with what appeals to the eyes. Well, the fallen angels were teaching that to human beings, and particularly women, of how to seduce men. That is the problem to this day. And so one of the things that is hard to describe, so let me make a point of application about this. One of the dilemmas we are facing in the modern world, because it's never really happened to us until the 1960s, was women in the workforce. From up until that point, it was just men in the workforce. And men didn't have to deal with women working alongside them. It never was a problem, never was a distraction. We have yet to figure out how to deal, since the 60s, with women in the workforce. What do you mean? Well, that has brought a whole new element of seduction into the workforce for men. And most men can't handle it. In fact, most of the things that go on in the workforce would have never happened 100 years ago, ever. And we don't know the full consequences and ramifications of having men and women work together in our society. We are still trying to figure this out. It has hurt economics by doing that, and you can blame the feminist movement for this, by the way. It lowered the pay for men and elevated the pay for women, and basically that's what created a two-income problem, like in the state of California too, and around a lot of the places in our country because of that. The other thing that human resources do not know how to deal with is how women should dress in the workplace. Right now, HR is so afraid to tell women how to modestly dress because they're afraid a woman's going to sue them. You're having people show up to work, women especially, that are not dressed appropriately. They are dressed way too seductive. They are dressed totally inappropriate. And the guys in the workforce don't know how to handle it. It's driving them crazy. And because of the HR and the delicate subject of not wanting to be sued, they basically are not telling women how to dress modestly at the workforce. And that's the problem. You got people showing up as if they're going to some type of cocktail bar, working in a business, and it's distracting. It's a major problem because they don't know how to dress appropriately, and HR won't deal with it. So the idea of cosmetics and beautification, do not take that lightly. That is a major problem, and it started from fallen angels teaching seduction of how to seduce men. So the issue then, if I jump into the book of Proverbs, which is the literature of wisdom, it keeps overemphasizing the seductress to the man over and over and over again, because it is a problem, not only in the ancient world, but it is a problem in our modern world. So, war, how to tap into the occult, and seduction was all taught by the Watcher angels in trading for their daughters. They gave this information to man, and it basically corrupted humans and basically led most of the people away from God. First Enoch, if you read this, explains that the giant bodies were destroyed in the flood. Their spirits became evil spirits we call demons, and they roamed the earth without bodies, seeking to harm humans, seeking for possession. That right there, even though it's in extra biblical literature, also helps explain the difference in Scripture between demons and fallen angels. And without First Enoch, you still can make the case that a demon is very different than a fallen angel. They are way different when you look at demons and you look at fallen angels. They are so much different. And I don't have time to go into that, but isn't it interesting that Second Temple literature also confirms that there is a difference between the two? So the concept is that demons are disembodied spirits of Nephilim, and they seek to possess. Angels do not possess. They can possess, but they don't seek to possess because they don't need to. They can manifest a body if they want to. They can eat. They can have sex. They can do all kinds of things physically. Demons can't do that. Demons need a body to work through. All fallen angels do not. Let's go back to the uncovered head in worship. So like we said, it's a symbol of rebellion to the spiritual realm. So whether it's an angel or a fallen angel, they know all about authority, and they know how it's supposed to work. They know what God's law is. And so when fallen angels particularly see signs of spiritual rebellion, whether it's in a woman or a man, all of a sudden the camouflage is lost. See, what you're trying to do in spiritual warfare is stay unnoticed. What do you mean? Well, as long as you obey, you're camouflaged. The minute you start sinning, your camouflage disappears, and all attention goes directly to you, from the demonic world and the fallen angel world. So you want to stay off the radar as much as you can, so obey. But the minute you disobey, it's like all eyes are on you then. Until you confess, until you repent. That's why it's very important. If you sin, confess it quick and repent quick, because all of a sudden the red light has went off in the spiritual realm. You're not camouflaged anymore. They see you, and they're wanting to see what's going to happen here, and how can we take advantage of this. You confess it, repent, it goes away, and you go back down into camouflage. So that's what's going on in the spiritual realm. So when they see a woman head uncovered in the first century, the woman is not camouflaged anymore. Her spiritual rebellion is sticking up like a red light in the spiritual realm for everyone to see, as far as fallen angels and demons are concerned. It is putting out the signal, come after me, come after me. I'm in rebellion. I'm in rebellion to my own husband, and I am in rebellion to God. That's what it's signaling. Now, most people don't know they're signaling. They don't think they're signaling. But this is what Paul's trying to get. So it's an invitation to Genesis 6. Now, when I say that, I don't mean that if a woman is rebellious to her husband and rebellious to spiritual authority, that they're going to mate with her. That's not what I'm saying. But what they will get is the same kind of interference and temptation as seen in Genesis 6. They will get that kind of level of problem. And that's what Paul's trying to get at. So basically, in spiritual warfare, you want to pay particular attention to opening, footholds. Ephesians 4:27 says, "Do not let Satan get a foothold in your life." Well, a foothold is an open invitation. It's a beachhead that they can operate from in your sin nature. And when someone's in spiritual rebellion, it's an open invitation to say, come and get me. I'm giving you permission to come and tempt me, harass me, seduce me, do whatever. That's what it is. And so based on Genesis 6 and other ancient sources, from Jewish sources, you want to look at it in three ways from a fallen angel standpoint. The first one is observation. So they're observing. They observe you what you do on Sunday morning. They observe you what you're doing right now. They're always observing you. That's why they're called watchers. They observe you. And they observe what you're doing in worship. They observe your attention. They observe everything. So you cannot hide from the spiritual realm. They are watching everything we do all the time. Okay? That's a little unnerving a lot of times. But that you have to understand that's the nature of spiritual warfare, but that's why you want camouflage. You want camouflage so they don't pay attention to you, and the way you have camouflage is stay obedient to the Lord. Then you have attraction. So if they observe you and they find out you're sending signals that you're open, that you're in putting out a front, you're putting out an invitation to this, then that lack of modesty, that lack of submission is perceived as a vulnerability and gives them the freedom to go after you and to establish a foothold and basically set you up for spiritual seduction, set you up for spiritual temptation. That's how they work. Then at that point, the third level is corruption. They will attempt to influence you through temptation, deception, disorder in relationships, marriage, and sexual immorality. That is the key. And one of their big, easy tricks is sexual immorality. They'll just tempt you to go into sexual immorality every time. And why do they keep doing it? Because it works. It works. The sexual immorality that the women did in Genesis 6 was to mate with a fallen angel. And the sexual immorality from the fallen angel standpoint was mating with strange flesh. So it was a strange flesh mating situation. And Jude talks about that being a strange flesh. So basically, this is the three things that will happen. Observation, who's giving off the signals in the room, and then whoever gives off the signals, they go after to corrupt. That's how it works. That's how spiritual warfare works. So in this regard, Paul is trying to refer to this in the Corinth church. And he is saying some of the ladies are walking into the service and sending off signals by having their head uncovered to fallen angels, which are going to set themselves up for corruption of Genesis 6. So in essence, basically, they exploit the breach of God's order to introduce chaos, whether that's through lust, pride, influence, leading to moral compromise. Now, again, why is the issue not involved with men? Why is he making a point about the women? Well, number one, this is what was happening. But number two, it's a pattern that everybody needs to understand. It's a pattern in Scripture that the first people that Satan goes after are women. And where am I getting that pattern from? I'm getting it from Genesis. That is the prototypical pattern. And that's why it's in there, to show you that's how Satan works. He doesn't go after Adam. He will take Adam down by using the woman against him, who will seduce him to eat. And what did I say? One of the things they taught women to do in Genesis 6, seduce. So it's Eve. He knew he's not going to be able to go one-on-one and seduce Adam to eat of the fruit. So guess who he goes through? Eve. He will use the woman to seduce the man to sin. That's the pattern. The man has a soft spot for the woman. And that soft spot is how he will make the man vulnerable. He won't take him on one by one. He will take him down by his own spouse. He will take him down by his girlfriend. He'll take him down by women, or whatever the issue is. So it's a pattern of working through the woman to get to the man. And that's what he's doing here in Corinth. Satan is working through the woman to get to the man, but he goes after the woman first. If he can get the woman tied up in corruption, he knows eventually he can get the woman to corrupt the man. For instance, how did Balaam, he couldn't curse Israel. What did he say to the king to do? This is how you're going to corrupt Israel. Send your women to them. And the women will corrupt them. They'll commit idolatry with the women, and then Yahweh will have to curse them. Same pattern. Guys, if you just watch this pattern, corrupt Israel through women, through pagan women. The pagan women will get the men to practice idolatry, and then God will curse the nation for idolatry. It wasn't, you know what? Go stand up a bunch of statues of Moloch and Asherah and Baal and let the Israeli men worship them. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. And that should tell all of us how we are to guard ourselves. how you as men need to be paying attention to how a female might be seducing you to do something out of context with God. And as a female, you should pay particular attention that when you do not submit to your spiritual head, whether that's your dad, whether that's your husband, or whether that's your church, you are now going to be attacked. You have made yourself vulnerable, and the attack will go through you, and then eventually he will corrupt you to corrupt your spiritual head. That's how it works. It's nothing new. It's the same pattern every time. Now, let me take one step further. So that's our personal application for this. But let me go back to the unbelieving world, okay? In the unbelieving world, they still do experience these occurrences quite frequently, by the way. And you may not be aware of this, but they do have sex with them. They make deals with women. They make deals with men. And you have incubus, which are fallen angels that lay with women, and you have succubus, fallen angels who lay with men. Fallen angels are still males, so they're practicing homosexuality or sodomy, and the other one is with women. So it still happens. Fallen angels can materialize in bodily form, can and do have sex with humans, and when manifesting, they can create functional biological systems. That's not a problem. Good angels do the same thing. They can fight, they can eat, they can do all kinds of things. So when angels manifest or fallen angels manifest, it's not just an appearance like a ghostly appearance. They can manifest physically. Now, here's some more proof of that. Our Navy, our military picks these creatures up on radar. They pick them up on radar. They see them go in and out of water, see them circling around, and then they see them go off the radar. They see them traveling at 13,000 miles per hour, which there's nothing we know any military that can travel that fast, and turn on a right angle and stop on a dime. Now, if that was ET in a spaceship, the G-forces would crush them. But these are fallen angels, and when they manifest physically. And so when they manifest physically, they appear on radar because they're physically manifesting. And then they go off of radar. So we already have proof that we're seeing fallen angels appear in the sky more than we ever have before. And this continues to happen. It's going to continue to happen because they're wanting you to think, the fallen angels are wanting you to believe something that's not true. And what do you think they're wanting you to believe? That they're aliens. They don't want you to believe that's them. So they materialize. And so again, radar in our best military, not some crazy, hayseed out in Area 51, but our best military is saying, we saw them on radar, our pilots are seeing them, and then they disappear. They're physical. You can see water. They go into water. And the speed of, when they're underwater, their speed doesn't change when they're in water. So what does that tell you? It's different. That's not any physical vehicle, because when a physical vehicle goes into water, it gets slowed down tremendously. But they go the same speed underwater and outside of water. It doesn't change. Anyway, everybody in Second Temple literature knew this. They believe that angels had the ability to take on actual physical bodies with full human male capabilities. Let me add one more thing. So Nephilim are not being created. Let's just get that out of the way because there's a penalty to that. There will be one more Nephilim, that's the Antichrist, but they're not able to make hybrids anymore because the penalty is to be sent to Tartarus, where there's permanent confinement until the Great White Throne Judgment. But there are reports of people having sex with spirit entities, myriads of reports of that. One of the primary aspects of this is alien abductions. In alien abductions, it shows that 63% of reported abductees are typically female when they're abducted. So I wonder why, right? What gets reported in alien abductions? What do they do with females? There's all kinds of reproductive procedures. There's egg harvesting. Many report that aliens extract ova through procedures that resemble gynecological exams. Fertilization experiments, some claim that they're shown or told that their eggs were fertilized with alien or hybrid DNA. Hybrid children are brought into the situation. A recurring motive is being introduced to or shown hybrid children, a blend of human and alien features whom the woman is told to help create, that she's been chosen, she's special, and she's gonna create this hybrid. Physical examination, often pelvic exams, probes, implants, or devices allegedly inserted into the body. These exams describe an emotionally traumatic for the woman, often including paralysis, fear, or dissociation. There's emotional manipulation. Some women report a strange emotional bond with the hybrid children they're shown. Others describe telepathic communication, that's very, very common. There's not words being spoken, but it's all telepathic. And manipulation meant to calm or confuse them. There's ongoing monitoring that these women report. Many abductees, particularly women, claim repeated visits. There's often a tracking element where the experiencer believes they're being watched or revisited for follow-up reproductive purposes. And a couple more things I'd mention about this. Again, like it says, it's 63% female. The males have the same thing, and they're always messing with the reproductive organs. It shouldn't come to anybody's surprise that alien abductions are messing with the genitalia of humans, because that's what Genesis 6 was about. It was using the reproductive abilities and created hybrids. There was an abduction study conference at MIT. This is 1992, so this is MIT. This is not some Christian organization. This is not some wackadoo Area 51 organization. This is MIT. The landmark symposium entitled Alien Discussions Proceedings of the Abduction Study Conference was held at MIT Cambridge in June 1992. It drew together researchers, psychologists, anthropologists, clinicians to explore UFO abductions and satanic ritual abuse, or SRAs, and related phenomena using rigorous cross-disciplinary methods. So they wanted to compare alien abductions to satanic ritual abuse, because they found similarities. And so what happens was, when they compared the two, between abductions and ritual abuse, they found the compelling evidence at the conference showing 44 parallels between alien abductions and SRAs, which includes the use of hypnosis, recovered memory, sexual rituals, trauma responses, and cultural motives. So what MIT is concluding is, how is there 44 parallels between SRAs and alien abductions? Same thing, same thing's occurring. Here's the 44 parallels. Both phenomena surfaced in the late 1970s to early 80s. And it's still going on, by the way, but that's when it started. Recovered via hypnosis or memory regression techniques. Involvement often begins in childhood. And I have a pretty good hunch of why. It's probably somebody in the house is messing with the occult. Frequently affects multiple family members, so it tends to happen to other people, and that would make sense. If someone in the house is messing with the occult, it would affect the multiplicity of people in the home. It gives them a pass. It was often passed down generationally. Well, that's exactly what we know about the occult. That when one person is messing with the occult, they can actually pass their powers down to their offspring. A woman or a man that's practicing witchcraft can pass the witchcraft off to his kids, and then that can be passed off to their grandkids. Powers of clairvoyance, powers of psychic abilities can be passed on hereditary through spiritual passings. And so this is not out of the bounds in the occult, which is interesting because the same thing is going on in alien abductions. Central examination tables acts like SRA ritual altar. So there's always an altar in satanic ritual abuse. There's always some type of table, examination table they're putting the victim on. Always focus on the genitals and body tissues. Hands down, always the genitals, always. Why is that? How come the aliens are never looking at the brain or the heart or a foot? How come the aliens are always looking at genitals? Presence of rape and sexual assault elements are always involved in it. Breeding or interbreeding themes are involved in it, in both. satanic ritual abuse, and alien abductions. Events occur during altered states like sleep or trance. Episodes of missing time are experienced by the individual. They can't figure out when the abduction happened, or SRAs. They're missing time. They don't know where, they black out. Extensive use of medication and sedation are used in both. And by the way, medication sedation can get you an altered state of consciousness. Physical markings are found, scars or even implants are found in the victims. Sensory deprivation are implemented. Use of ritualistic symbols such as crosses or lights are used. Vivid illumination or lights as part of the scene. Psychological intimidation or terror imposed on victims. Use of threats or coercion are used. Presence of non-human entities, demons or aliens. Alleged communication via telepathy or messages, and that's common. It's always telepathic, it seems like. Clothing removal, stripping, ritualized. Reports of repetitive repeats of similar events. Emotional dissociation is commonly described. Memory resurfacing through cultural triggers. Objects and tools used in rituals and examinations. Genetic or biological sampling like eggs or semen. Belief in hybrid or unnatural offspring. Involvement in secret or hidden locations. Subjects are sometimes transported physically. Environmental smells or sensations come out. Pain without injury reported. Alleged implantation of devices which appear later. Repressive or authoritarian figures directing activity. Sacrificial or symbolic rituals like blood or symbols. Victims feel controlled or confined. Recounted time distortions and disorientation. Memories recover in fragments, nonlinear. Intense feelings of guilt or fear about memory. Stealth threats, victims told not to tell others. Interaction with painful medication or pseudo-medical tools. Visions or hallucinations often accompany events. Claim of supernatural invisible guardians present. Both often include ritualistic narratives or scripts. After effects include phobias, sleep disorders, and trauma symptoms. That's the 44 parallels between SRAs and alien abductions. If you're reading the data coming and straight from MIT, not from First Baptist Church of this, what do you conclude of why there's 44 patterns of similarity between the two? If it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, acts like a duck, it's a duck. They're not aliens, it's fallen angels. Impersonating aliens or whatever, trying to make you think they're aliens, trying to make you abducted. But this is classic SRA, man. This is classic Genesis 6. This is classic incubus, succubus. And they're always messing with the genitalia, always having sex, all kinds of stuff like that. Now, if you guys recall, there was a movie in, I think, the early 80s, mid 80s called The Entity. They actually made a documentary of a woman that continued to be raped by a ghost. Well, it wasn't a ghost. It was an entity, a spirit creature, fallen angel that continued to rape her. They filmed it, they documented it, and they actually made a movie about it. And then at the end of the movie, it said that the occurrences continued to happen. And it's like, yeah, of course it's going to continue to happen because the person has an opening for it. And so it will continue to happen. So the issue then becomes, that's still happening. It's still happening with people. Now, here's the other thing. Commonly reported smells in alien abduction narratives. Sulfur or rotten eggs. That is the most common smells associated to these creatures. And the aliens, by the way. These creatures are shadowy, menacing figures. They can cause sleep paralysis or abductions, whatever, but that choking odor. Sometimes the rotten egg smell, it might be like a decaying flesh smell, like a dead smell. You know, something's dead. So that might be another smell. You also have ozone electrical burning smells. Described as a scent that follows a lightning strike or electrical malfunction. You can smell those things sometimes. Often linked to the appearance of a craft or energy field used in abductions, so they'll smell that. And then a chemical smell or an antiseptic odor that will come out. They report a metallic hospital-like smell in the examination rooms aboard the ships. And so that's another common smell. The interesting thing about the sulfur and rotten egg smell is it's sulfur. And sulfur is associated with the underworld. And fallen angels have access to and from the fallen world, from the underworld, so do demons. And apparently they pick up the smell of the underworld and they carry it on them a lot of times. And so I've had people walk in their homes and they smell these eggs, they smell sulfur, or they smell like a burning smell in their home, like the ozone electrical burning, but it smells like someone lit a match throughout their entire house and they smell it. That's them. That's their smell. A burnt smell, disgusting flesh. The smell is so bad that it will make you puke. The smell is so bad. Now, here's the thing. They have the ability to turn the smell on, and they have the ability to turn the smell off. They have the ability to turn the room frigid, and they have the ability to turn the room hot. They can change the temperature in the room. There's all kinds of things that they can do. And it doesn't make, when people talk about these abductions, you totally understand how they could be influenced to think that they're aliens, because spiritually they're doing all kinds of stuff to them. And they can make anything they want appear to them. So anyway, the one more thing I would say, and then I can take some questions after this, is they in these alien abductions, the fallen angel will take on an appearance of a typical alien, a gray or the little green men, so to speak, the little workers. But they take on a certain look. The big eyes, 2 slits for a nose, a slit for a mouth, big heads, skinny arms, skinny legs, skinny body. Sometimes there's no mouth, so it doesn't look like they eat. They don't talk, but they telecommunicate. So then the question then becomes, why are fallen angels taking on this particular appearance? Why not something else? Why not, I don't know, half giraffe and half zebra or half whatever? Why is it looking like this particular thing? Why is it the grays? Why is it the the machinists? Usually they're real small. Some of them are real small, right? Less threatening. Big heads. No, so the arms have no muscles in them. The legs have no muscles in them. The body really has no muscles in it, but it has an enormous head. Can you think through that? They have a certain look to them. So you got to understand, when you study aliens, what's the paradigm of aliens? Where'd they come from? Well, they came from outer space. Okay, yeah, I know that. But where do they fit as far as the narrative is concerned? As far as where they come from, where did God create them? Where did they come from? They're part of the evolutionary story. That's why they look like they look. They're part of the evolutionary story, the lie of evolution. And so the fallen angels are taking on the appearance of advanced evolution. And with advanced evolution, we think, again, evolution's wrong, but the evolutionary mindset is the further we go down the line and evolve, the less we will need our physical bodies for physical work, the more we will need our brains because technology will accompany us, so technology will do all the heavy lifting. We won't need muscles, we will just need brains. So the way the aliens look fit the evolutionary paradigm of what we are supposed to look like if we evolved millions of years later like they have evolved. Again, the evolutionary paradigm is a lie. But that's the first thing that Satan came with out of the book. And it wasn't Darwinian evolution, it was spiritual evolution. Spiritual evolution has been since Babylon. And so when you look at the aliens, people don't catch up on this, they're not understanding. They look what you would think we would look like if we evolved a million years. We wouldn't need we don't need physical bodies when we have technology to do everything for us. All we would need is a head. And that's why they look like they look. So when you understand how the game is played, then you understand why they manifest the way they manifest. So in the Middle Ages, guess how they manifested? What did fallen angels manifest as during the Middle Ages? Because they didn't take on the typical alien shape that we know now. They took on the concept of trolls, nymphs, gargoyles, all the creatures that made the Middle Ages fear. You know, all those creatures, those supernatural creatures, fairies and all these other trolls and goblins and stuff like that. That's the features they took on because that's the features that scared that particular generation. But now we're in the technological generation, so guess what they got to do? They've got to come up with another narrative. And they come up with a narrative, aliens from space. It's not that hard to figure out what they're doing if you just follow their lies. Their lies will tell you why they're doing what they're doing. And so at the end of this, what do you think they're trying to cover up? What do you think the next thing they realize is coming and they have to create a narrative for to provide a life for? The rapture. They have to provide a narrative for the rapture, and this is why you're seeing so many of them appear in the skies, and they're manifesting. And like, when did I say the abduction started? 70s and 80s. Dude, that's fairly recent. That's fairly recent. So I think what would happen is, if you go back to Roswell, and Roswell, I think the evidence on that was it was one of our military crafts. But along with all these alien sightings and all this other stuff in the skies, it started happening after Israel becomes a nation. And once Israel becomes a nation, it's off the chart crazy. It just goes off the chart as far as things in the sky and now. And I think it has to do with them seeing the big sign of Israel coming back into the land and then saying, we got to do something now. It's on. It's game on right now. We have to do something. And they know the Bible better than we do. And so they know the next event will be the rapture. So they're preparing for that, I think, with this narrative. But anyway, I'll take any question before we take a break.
So I got a question for you.
Okay.
So in light of 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16, where it says all scripture is inspired by God, why was the book of Enoch excluded? And if it was excluded, does that lead anyone to question its veracity or?
Not necessarily. What you have to look at First Enoch or even First and Second Maccabees or anything, they were excluded because there was aspects of it that weren't entirely accurate. And one of the key things about incorporating anything into Scripture is it has to be 100% accurate. And some of the parts of it that were not. And some of it, like in Second Maccabees, First Maccabees, were not accurate, even from a theological standpoint. But we use First and Second Maccabees to understand the Maccabean revolt because it's historical. It's really our only historical document to understand the Maccabean revolt, which gave us Hanukkah. So what we understand about these, they're not inspired, but they are historical books, and that's how they should be treated. And it's like reading the history of Plato or Suetonius or Tacitus or even Josephus. We're not entirely sure that everything Josephus put in his history is 100% accurate because he was writing for the Romans. So, but we still treat that as a historical document with pretty good veracity. And that's how you should look at Second Temple literature, whether it's Jubilees, First and Second Maccabees, First Enoch, is okay, this is not scripture. We don't know if it's 100% accurate, but it does give us some clues of the history of what the Jews thought at the time. And based on that, I'm able to draw a few more conclusions from that. Am I 100% accurate? No, I am not. But I then understand, well, it seems to me that when I look at the writers of the New Testament, they are using phrases from First Enoch. And they're borrowing it. So that means the writers of the New Testament were very familiar with that work. In fact, Jude quotes Enoch, First Enoch. So Jude even uses him. But there was parts of it that are not canonical or didn't pass all the tests. Can we use it? Yeah. But even without First Enoch, you still have a hybrid situation that's going on in Genesis 6. And you still have the cause of the flood. And it still answers why Paul is telling the women to put a head covering on. So you still have your answer. It's just what First Enoch is doing is maybe giving you a few more clues about what's happening. And here's what you do with that. If I see what happened, and First Enoch is saying they were trading information for their wives. Okay. So if I'm going to look at that, okay, I'm not going to put it on the level of scripture, but I'm going to say I'm going to say this. Am I seeing that pattern today in the demonic realm? Yes, without a doubt. Everyone that I have come in contact with, everyone that I heard that came out of the occult, say they were having information dumps by these creatures, giving them the secrets of the universe, giving them all kinds of technology. Steve Jobs, the guy who invented Macintosh, he was having dreams and a spirit creature was giving him the information of how to create Macintosh. So what he said is he would go into the office the next day and just implement what he had been given in the dream. So I look at that and I hear about all the tech guys in Silicon Valley. I'm thinking, you're getting downloaded information, stuff that you wouldn't know, and then I'm looking at First Enoch, I'm like, that seems to be a similar pattern. So something is telling me, and I'm not 100% sure, but something is telling me something's there. And when I've talked personally to people that have done psychedelics, they went in psychedelics, talked to spirit creatures, and the spirit creatures were dumping information into them. And they said, Brandon, it was like the knowledge was outside of my body and it just was put into my head. And I had all this knowledge and I knew it wasn't my knowledge, but someone had dumped it in my head from these spirit creatures. Oh, wow. That's people in our own congregation that came out of that. So you don't going to give it 100%, but you're like, where there's smoke, there's fire. There's something there. Something's there. Where am I at?
I was going to say, we got into the topic of the Bermuda Triangle, and how I responded to it was that I know that the Bible talks about how, you could correct me if I'm wrong, is in the heart of the earth.
The what's in the heart?
Hell?
Yes, it is. Yeah, the underworld's in the heart of the earth, yeah.
So do you think that the Bermuda Triangle has something to do with that area?
You know, the theory is, it's from a spiritual standpoint, it could be a portal. That it's a portal. And portals are very common in the occult. That's what the top of the Tower of Babel was for. The top of the Tower of Babel was a portal and to bridge the spiritual realm to the physical realm and vice versa. So the theory is, and again, I'm not 100% sure, but the theory is that the Bermuda Triangle possibly is a portal from the spirit realm to this. Maybe. But something's weird happening there, right? That's not explainable. But it is explainable if you look at it from a supernatural standpoint. If I look at the dimensions of what a portal does, then it checks the box for a portal. Maybe. The underworld, yeah. Well, I mean, I'll tell you from the rabbinic standpoint, bodies of water were considered portals into the underworld. Along with the Valley of the Travelers on the eastern side of Jerusalem was another entrance into hell. But water was also, bodies of water because it represented chaos and the destruction. It was also symbolic of the entrance into the underworld is through bodies of water. How accurate that is, I don't know, but that was rabbinic tradition. They held it for some reason. So it's the Bermuda Triangle's over a body of water. It seems to act like, it seems to be multidimensional, right? It seems that something's happening, something can disappear, and we can't, where to go? It seems multidimensional. That's all I'm saying. Okay, where am I at? Yep.
As you was teaching this, the scripture out of the New Testament came to mind, and I probably always misunderstood it. But it's something along the lines of beware lest you are entertaining angels unaware.
Yeah, and the writer of Hebrews talks about that as a warning. A good angel, and there's been a lot of... am I on there? There we go. There's been a lot of missionaries that talk about encountering angels. Billy Graham wrote a whole book on angels and all those encounters. You're absolutely right, because when an angel manifests, there are typically two of them that are young men. And, they rescue people, they do certain things, they say certain things. So what's happened now, and you're totally right about this, we as Westerners have gotten rid of the supernatural entirely, and we don't think that could ever happen. But like the writer of Hebrews says, be careful. He's telling you to be hospitable because you might entertain an angel one day and you don't even know it. So you're totally right. In the ancient world, everybody's radar was up on spirituality. But in the Western world, we've just kind of killed it, and we don't see it, even though it's around us, even though it's happening. But that's a good point. It's an excellent point. Where am I at with the mic? Yeah, go ahead.
All right, Pastor. I wanted to go back to women and deception. And
okay.
So, and it's clearly obvious that a man is stronger physically than a woman. And I'll use, Jeannie and I as an example. She's intellectually, she's way smarter than I am. And so it has nothing to do with intellect. It has nothing to do with strength. Does it have something to do with the fact that woman was made from flesh?
No, it has to do with how God gifted a woman for her best ability. And so I want you to think about this. Of all the creatures that God created, so angels don't reproduce, obviously, but then you go to humans, and then let's talk about the animals. So when an animal is born, like a giraffe or whatever, like a giraffe will start standing within, 20 minutes, 30 minutes when it's born? Because why? It has to. Because the lion will get it or whatever. So we see even in the animal order that their babies are actually able to function very, very rapidly. But why is it that humans are the longest developed creature? Think about how long a baby goes through a baby's toddler. A toddler can't even walk, till 1.5, maybe 2, I don't know, I can't remember. But why does it take us so long to develop versus what the animals, they're instantaneously on their feet, they're able to run, they're able to get away from enemies. But we take a long time to develop. Hence, if we're taking a long time to develop, and that's how God made us, that requires that the caregiver, the primary caregiver, must be fully equipped to go at it long term. Versus an animal, a female animal that raises a giraffe, and giraffes on their own. Versus a baby who is vulnerable for goodness, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, they're vulnerable. Well, if that's the case, then the female of that species must be equipped to handle and nurture that young for a very long time. Hence, that's the gifting that mothers have, the nurturing aspect, which men do not possess. So the way God structured us is that the females will have the long-term care of these children to raise them, and therefore are equipped with a very powerful nurturing aspect to them. That being the case, their greatest strength is their greatest weakness. Because that nurturing is full of emotion. And like when Dennis, when a baby suckles at his mom, they're given oxytocin back and forth a lot of times. And so just a baby being around the mom is giving off chemicals that actually help the child. Men, we're not equipped for that. But the women are able to do that through their emotionalism and their nurturing. Okay, so Satan understands that. So because women are gifted with the emotional nurturing of young children, that becomes the point of vulnerability. Because he can manipulate their emotions and get them to do something irrational based on emotions. Guys, on the other hand, emotions are not our strength. We have a little bit, but not a lot. And that emotions, because we were equipped to provide, go out and do what we needed to do to provide while the mom nurtures the children. But so we have to look for enemies. So if you go back to, whether it's our farming days or our hunting days early on when Adam and Eve were created, you have to be aware of where am I going to get food, what am I going to do, and I have to be alert. I have to be on. If I'm going to be alert, I can't be emotional. I have to be alert, okay? So that becomes an instinct in the man. And so because he doesn't possess emotions, it's harder to fool a guy. It's not that he can't be fooled, it's harder to fool him because he doesn't have the emotions operating. So, back to this. So then we understand him going through the woman to manipulate her emotions, and the man doesn't have a lot of emotions unless he has a female companion. And that's where his emotions actually are with his female companion. And hence, Satan, to get to the man, will go through the very one thing he knows will get to the man, which is his female companion. Use her to manipulate him, sweet talk him, and Dennis, you know how it happens. Just telling you. Just stating the obvious. So Dennis, go back to Genesis 6. They taught women how to seduce men. So if you're going to take down a man, you use a woman to bring him down. Every time, it'll work. Every time. Every time. Pretty scary. It's pretty scary, but that's the pattern, right? And Dennis, go through every passage, whether it's David and Bathsheba, whether it's the same stinking pattern every time. It never fails. Yeah, Frank, go ahead.
All right, we have an online question, and this goes back to head coverings. She asks, so why don't the majority of women wear head coverings in the church today?
Yeah, because it was a cultural thing at that time. We have lost the cultural significance, but the principle does remain the same. And so what is the principle? The principle is females need to be under male authority, and then that authority of that home is under the church authority, and that church is under Christ's authority, right? So you have an authority line. Okay, so what if you're single? Because it's easy to explain that if you're married, who your authority is, that's your husband, right? What if you're single? Who's your authority? It's your next kin. That's your authority. Next of kin. So is it your dad? And the next male kin. It could be a cousin. It could be a brother. It could be an uncle. Who do you have left? Okay? If you're single. Now, let's say you're older and single and you don't have a mom and dad. You don't have a brother and siblings. They have died. Who's left? You go to your next authority. And guess who that would be? The church. The pastor. So if you're a single woman and you don't have any other males to be that person for you, you would access the church and the pastor. When you made spiritual decisions, you would run that by them to make sure you're not doing something out of line. And that would be the next authority. That's how it works. If you access that, guess what happens? You're protected. If you don't access that, you're on your own. You become vulnerable. You're not now without spiritual protection. And by the way, they know fully how that works in the demonic and fallen angel realm.
I kind of had a follow-up question to the person that asked, like, if you don't have that husband, you go to your dad, but what if your dad or your brother, like, they're not in the church? They're not reading their word.
They're not
They're not spiritual, yeah.
Okay.
And you're the first person in your family to start doing that.
Then you definitely use the church for your authority. You use like an associate pastor or anyone, but the church is obviously a big organization. So you have Titus women you can go to and talk to. Obviously the pastors are there, but you would access the church because this is the next authority level over you. And so if you are going to make a big decision in your life, and we're not talking about like what color clothes you're going to wear tomorrow, but the big decisions like who I'm going to marry and should I go to college or whatever, you want to run that through the next level. So maybe talk to a Titus woman in the church, talk to one of the associate pastors. Hey, this is what I'm thinking. And you would run that decision process through them. That would be your next level. And that's how you would stay protected, actually. But if you said, you know what, I'm just going to do anything on my own, you're vulnerable. Not that you're going to make bad decisions, but you're just vulnerable. You don't have any spiritual protection. So that would be the next thing, is the church, in that sense. So this is interesting about the Orthodox and Hasidics. So the women will get these like $8,000 wigs. They're made of real hair and they're amazing. But that's the norm in Israel. And it's like, you're totally right. You're still revealing human hair on your head, even though it's a wig, it still looks like human hair, and no one would know the difference except your husband, right? And so it's part of the disconnect that they have with actual covering their hair. It's weird. And here's another disconnect. So they're supposed to dress modestly, right? And cover all parts of their body in Orthodox Hasidic. And like, okay. But then here's their compromise or hypocrisy. They'll wear skin-tight clothes and show every inch of their body, but they have a thin veneer of leotard, a bodysuit that shows everything, but they consider that covered. And you're like, that's hypocrisy. I could see every form and shape of you in a leotard. That's what you're supposed to cover up, is your shape, not so much, the skin. And they're thinking, no, we're covering our skin. But yet you're showing a seductive body. And I thought, as an Israelite, it's like, it's hypocrisy. It's just hypocrisy, because when you're doing legalism, you can't fully do it consistent. And there's always this out. So Scripture says, dress modestly. Well, wearing a leotard that's not modest. I'm sorry, that's just not. And so, that's what ends up happening when you go so far and you just won't take it in what is the sense it's supposed to be taken. Dress appropriately for the occasion. That's what modesty is. Dressed appropriately, cultural norms. But then they take it out to a whole nother extreme, and before you know it, they're wearing $8,000 wigs of human hair, and it's still seductive, and they're wearing bodysuits. It's like, all right, doesn't make sense. Don't get into legalism, because that's the trap you're going to get in.
Hey everybody, I need your help, and I need your help in 3 different areas. First of all, I need your help on our channel. Our channel is working against an algorithm, and so we need you to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. And if you'll do that, that helps us get the message out to many people. It outdoes the algorithm that's working against us. So if you'll do those things, real simple, like, subscribe, hit the bell, it'll get our message out to as many people as possible. The second thing you could do to help us out is prayer. We get a lot of pushback online from not only human beings, but from the demonic realm as well. And so we need prayer. And so if you can pray for our ministry, that would greatly help us out. And third, it takes a lot of financial resources to put these programs on. And so we do a lot of filming, with a lot of editing, a lot of going on location. In fact, sometimes we film in Israel, and we film in Turkey and different places like that. And so it takes a lot of money to do these special programs that we put together. And so we need finances. And so if the Lord puts it on your heart to help us, that would be greatly appreciated by us and our ministry. So those are the 3 ways you can help us. Pray to the Lord how you could do that. Real easy. Like, subscribe, hit the bell, pray, and financially support us. God bless you. Thank you so much.